Dearly beloved in Jesus Christ, welcome to the reflections of 31st Sunday, Year B. Dear friends, love of God cannot be practiced in isolation, and love of neighbor is not possible without love of God. In today's Gospel, Jesus puts forth the double commandment of love of God and love of neighbor. And he adds, on these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets. The scribe in the Gospel joins his voice with Jesus saying, it is more important than all the burnt offerings and the sacrifices. Hence, Jesus gives the saturated definition of religion in terms of love of God and love of neighbor. Therefore, today's liturgy of the word gives us a true meaning and definition of religion in these two commandments. Dear friends, in the first reading we hear Shama of Israel, and it reads thus: Hear, O Israel, the Lord your God is one Lord, and you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. This is the Shama of Jews. This is the basic prayer with which all the Jewish services still today begin. And this is the first text which every Jewish child commits to his memory. Therefore, Shama is all in all for Jews. And this Shama exclusively speaks about love of God and the need of love of God towards the people of Israel. For Jews, this Shama is all in all. For instance, they write the text of Shama in their phylacteries of the clothing. And again, every devout Jew writes the text of Shama at the doorpost of his house. That is the importance of Shama for Jewish people. Shama in simple terms, as the psalmist says in Psalm 103 verse 1, loving the Lord with all that is within us. Therefore, if we love God truly, we cannot disobey His will. That is why Saint Augustine says, you love God and do whatever you want. They regard love of God as ultimate for everything. That's why Jesus tells, this is the first commandment. According to me, love of God is not possible in isolation. Here I remind you, there was a time in the church where people were in isolation to love God, which means people moved away from the society into the desert or into the forests to become more devoted to God. We have examples in the personalities of Saint Anthony of Egypt, Mary of Egypt, Pachomius, and so forth. These are the people, they moved away from the society, they lived in isolation to know the love of God more and to become devout to Him. But for us who live in this modern society, the challenge is we have to love God in the society. That's what I'm saying, we cannot love God in isolation. We are given a challenge to live in this world very much with all the sophisticated scientific inventions and all the possible means of distractions. But still, we are asked to love God. That is why I say love of God is not possible in isolation and we have a challenge. Dear friends in Christ, the second commandment is love your neighbor as yourself. This is a quotation taken from book of Leviticus chapter 19, verses 18. Love of God must be issued in love of men. The biblical teaching about man is not that he is just a combination of chemical elements. He is not just part of a brute creation, but he is made in the image and likeness of God. Genesis 1:26. And for this reason, man is lovable, which means we don't need any other reasons to love our neighbor. He is lovable just the way he is created. Our love towards our neighbor should not be based on the things that we get from him, rather on the personality that God created in him, which is image of God. That is why we are asked to love our neighbor from our heart. Love of our neighbor is a proof of our love towards God. For we hear in 1 John chapter 4 verses 20, those who say they love God but hate their neighbors are liars. For how can you love your God whom you cannot see when you fail to love your neighbor whom you see? That's why measure your love towards God in the terms of your love towards your neighbor. Dear friends, note here the beautiful thing that Jesus does. Jesus combines these two commandments into one. No rabbis of those days had ever done this job, but Jesus brings these two into one. For him, religion is love of God and love of men. In conclusion, today's liturgy of the word tells us love is the completion of religion. This love should be shown in devotion to God and in service to others. Remember, humanity is the law of the religion, and religion cannot be spoken outside the realm of humanity. Therefore, let us be good Christians, loving God, loving our neighbor from the bottom of our hearts. Let God bless us all.